He was just a poor teen helping a stranger on the roadside. But when the rich man opened his wallet, what came next didn't just change the boy's day. It changed his entire family's destiny. Jamal was only 13 years old, but life had made him grow up fast. Living in a rundown neighborhood on the edge of the city, he had learned early what it meant to go without. His mother, a hard-working woman named Denise, did everything she could to keep the family afloat, working 2 jobs, skipping meals so Jamal could eat, and praying every night that something, anything, would change for the better. Jamal saw it all. He saw the tiredness in her eyes, the worry behind her smile, and the pain she tried so hard to hide. That's why he never complained. Instead, after school, he headed straight to a local mechanic shop owned by an old man named Ray. It wasn't a paying job, not really, but Ray gave him $5 here and there and taught him how to work with tools, change oil, patch tires, and keep his hands busy. Jamal liked it. He didn't say much, but his eyes lit up when he figured something out or fixed something on his own. At school, he kept to himself, avoided trouble, and never asked for help, no matter how tough things got. His shoes had holes in them, and his backpack was falling apart, but he kept his head high. That afternoon, the sun was hot and unforgiving as Jamal walked home from the garage, sweat clinging to his forehead, his stomach growling quietly. He had saved the bus fare again, planning to buy a small loaf of bread and a can of beans for dinner. As he passed by cars zooming down the road, he stayed close to the sidewalk, head down, shoulders heavy. But then something caught his attention. A sleek black car had pulled off to the side of the road up ahead, and a tall, frustrated-looking man in a suit was pacing next to it. Jamal could see the back tire completely flat. Without thinking, Jamal slowed down. Most people would have ignored it, kept walking, or assumed the man had someone on the way. But Jamal wasn't most people. He knew what it felt like to be stuck and have no help. And even though he didn't know who the man was or what kind of car it was, he stepped forward. "You need help, sir?" he asked quietly. The man turned, surprised to see a skinny boy with dirty hands and no shoes standing there. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. And just like that, with a simple question and a willingness to help, Jamal's life began to shift in a direction he never could have imagined. As Jamal stepped closer to the car, he could see the man more clearly. Tall, sharply dressed, and clearly out of place in the neighborhood. The stranger was sweating under the afternoon sun, his hands on his hips, frustration written all over his face. The black luxury car had a shredded rear tire, and it was clear he had no clue what to do next. "Yeah, I've got a flat," the man muttered, barely glancing at Jamal at first. "No signal, no spare, just great." Jamal nodded slowly, dropping his worn-out backpack to the ground. "I can fix it, if you've got a jack." The man blinked, now paying attention. "You know how?" Jamal shrugged. "I work at a garage. After school, I've changed lots." The man hesitated, then pointed toward the trunk. "It's in there. If you're serious." Jamal popped the trunk, grabbed the jack and a tire iron, then got to work. His hands moved quickly, confidently, and though the man offered to help, Jamal shook his head. "It's okay. I got it." Cars flew by, some honking, others slowing to look, but Jamal kept his focus. Dirt stained his hands and arms. Sweat dripped down his neck, and his shirt clung to his back, but he never paused. The man, surprised by the boy's quiet determination, just stood and watched. No complaints, no small talk. Just a kid who saw a problem and solved it. Within 20 minutes, the spare was on and tightened. Jamal stood up, wiped his hands on his shorts, and gave the tire a final check. "That should hold till you get to a shop," he said simply. The man looked stunned. "You really do know your stuff," he said, almost to himself. "What's your name, Jamal?" "Well, Jamal, I appreciate it. Seriously, let me give you something for your time." He pulled out his wallet and offered a crisp bill, but Jamal stepped back. "You don't have to," he said politely. "Just glad I could help." Then, without another word, he picked up his backpack and turned to walk away. The man stood there, stunned, watching the boy disappear down the street with dust at his heels. He had no shoes, no expectations. And yet, he had done what grown men had refused to do: help a stranger without wanting anything in return. For the first time in a long while, the man, Mr. Carter, felt something stir inside him, guilt and respect. This boy was different, special, and Mr. Carter was. As Mr. Carter drove away, the road felt quieter than before. His thoughts were loud, though looping back to the skinny, barefoot kid with grease-streaked arms, and a calm, confident voice. Who was he? Why had he helped without hesitation, without asking for anything in return? Mr. Carter was a wealthy man, used to people who only showed up when they needed something. In his world, everything came with conditions, favors, deals, strings attached. But that boy, he just helped and walked away like it was nothing. It unsettled him, in the best way. That night, as Mr. Carter sat in his luxury penthouse, far from that cracked sidewalk, he couldn't stop thinking about Jamal. He remembered the boy's steady hands, how he worked without fear, how he refused the money with a shy but firm no. It wasn't just surprising, it was rare, special. He hadn't seen that kind of raw honesty in years. And then, a quiet voice inside him whispered, "Don't let this end here." The next morning, Mr. Carter canceled a meeting and told his assistant to block out the day. "I need to find someone," he said. She was confused. "A business lead?" "No," he said. "Just a kid." He described Jamal the best he could, his age, the neighborhood, the garage he mentioned. He didn't even know the boy's last name. But Mr. Carter was determined. He couldn't explain why, but something in him knew. This wasn't just a good deed. It was a moment meant for more. He spent the day driving back to that part of town, stopping at gas stations, corner stores, even knocking on doors. Most people looked at him strangely, a rich man asking around in a poor neighborhood, but he didn't care. It wasn't until he visited a dusty old garage on a side street that he found a clue. The old man behind the counter squinted at the photo on Mr. Carter's phone. "That's Jamal," he said. "Comes here after school. Good kid, quiet, works hard. Why you asking?" Mr. Carter didn't explain much. He just smiled and asked for the boy's address. That evening, he drove to the small apartment complex the mechanic had mentioned. He saw kids playing outside, mothers watching from windows, and trash cans lined along the sidewalk. Then, he spotted the door with the peeling paint apartment, 3B. He took a deep breath, straightened his jacket, and walked up the stairs. Behind that door was a family who had no idea their world was about to change. Mr. Carter stood in front of the old apartment door, unsure for the first time in a long while. He had made billion-dollar decisions without flinching, but something about this moment felt different, personal. He raised his hand and knocked gently. A few seconds later, the door opened to reveal a tired-looking woman with deep eyes and a cautious expression. She was still in her work uniform, and her face showed signs of exhaustion. But when she saw Mr. Carter dressed sharply in a tailored suit, standing in her hallway, her eyes widened with confusion. "Can I help you?" she asked, holding the door halfway open. Mr. Carter cleared his throat. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm looking for a young man named Jamal. I believe he lives here." Her face shifted from surprise to concern. "Is he in some kind of trouble?" she asked, her tone protective. Mr. Carter quickly shook his head. "No, not at all. In fact, he helped me yesterday when I had car trouble. I'd been trying to find him ever since." Slowly, she opened the door wider. "You're the one with the flat tire." Mr. Carter smiled. "Yes, that's me. May I come in for just a moment?" She hesitated, then nodded and stepped aside. The apartment was small and worn, but clean and full of warmth. Jamal was sitting at the kitchen table, hunched over a textbook, his face lighting up in surprise when he saw the man walk in. "Sir," he said, confused. "You found me?" Mr. Carter nodded. "Yes, Jamal. I told you I wouldn't forget what you did." Jamal looked at his mom, unsure of what was happening. Mr. Carter sat down at the table across from him. "You changed my tire without asking for a thing. That kind of heart, it's rare. I want to do something in return." Jamal's mother watched silently, her eyes wide. Mr. Carter opened a folder he'd been carrying and laid out a few papers. "This is a scholarship. It covers tuition at one of the best schools in the city, uniforms, books, even transportation." Jamal stared at the papers, speechless. I don't know what to say." Mr. Carter leaned forward. "You don't have to say anything. Just keep being who you are." His mother covered her mouth with her hand, tears welling up in her eyes. Mr. Carter stood, placing a gentle hand on Jamal's shoulder. "This isn't charity. This is an investment. In you." And just like that, in the middle of a small apartment, with peeling paint and second-hand furniture, the boy who once walked home barefoot was handed the keys to a brand new future. The next morning felt like something out of a dream for Jamal and his mother. The house was still quiet, but their hearts were racing. Neither of them had slept much after Mr. Carter's visit. Jamal couldn't stop replaying Everything in his mind, how a simple act of kindness had led this powerful man to his doorstep, how real the scholarship papers had felt under his fingertips, and the way his mother cried silently, overwhelmed with emotion. When the sun rose, Jamal got dressed early, folding his old clothes as neatly as he could, even though most were worn thin. His mum, Denise, paced the small kitchen, making tea with trembling hands. She had spent years working herself into the ground, hoping just to keep Jamal fed and safe. Now someone had offered him a way out to a real future. Around 9 a.m., a silver car pulled up outside their building. Jamal peeked through the curtain and saw Mr. Carter step out, holding another folder in one hand and something else tucked under his arm. When Jamal opened the door, the man greeted them with a warm smile. "Good morning," he said kindly. "Hope I'm not too early." "Not at all," Denise replied, ushering him inside with a mix of nerves and gratitude. Mr. Carter sat down at their small dining table again, and this time, he came with more than just paperwork. "I have something for you as well, Miss Denise," he said gently. "You've raised a good young man, and I think it's time someone invested in you too." He handed her a clean folder, and when she opened it, her breath caught. It was a job offer, an official position, at one of Mr. Carter's companies, with full-time hours, benefits, and a living wage. Denise looked up, her eyes wet with disbelief. "Why would you do this?" she whispered. Mr. Carter leaned forward. "Because people like you don't get the chances they deserve. You've been strong for your son, now let me help take some of that weight off." Jamal watched his mother hold the papers like they were made of gold. He'd never seen her speechless before. Mr. Carter handed Jamal a small box. Inside were new school supplies, a tablet for studying, and a brand pair of shoes, something he hadn't had in years. Jamal looked up at him, unsure how to express the storm of emotions inside. "Thank you, sir," he finally said, voice soft. Mr. Carter smiled again. "No need to thank me, Jamal. Just promise me one thing when your time comes. Help someone else the way you helped me." Jamal nodded, a quiet promise blooming in his chest. The days that followed moved like a blur, but every moment felt brighter for Jamal and his mother. For the first time in years, Denise walked to work without the usual weight in her chest. She still wore her same old shoes, and carried her same worn-out bag, but something had changed, hope had returned. And for Jamal, everything suddenly looked different. The streets he used to walk with tired feet now felt like paths leading somewhere better. One morning, Mr. Carter returned, this time with a professional driver and a sleek black car, parked just outside their apartment. He stepped out, holding a crisp envelope and a new school uniform folded neatly in a bag. "Ready to see your new school?" he asked with a smile. Jamal looked at his mom, who nodded with proud, tearful eyes. They rode through the city, passing neighborhoods Jamal had never seen before: clean sidewalks, green parks, and schools with playgrounds and proper sports fields. When they arrived, the building towered above him, polished and modern, with students walking confidently in matching uniforms. Mr. Carter placed a gentle hand on Jamal's shoulder. "You belong here," he said firmly. "Don't ever think otherwise." That day, Jamal met with the school's headmaster, who welcomed him like a special guest. Every teacher had already been informed of Jamal's arrival, and they smiled at him as if they'd been waiting for him. His books were brand new, his locker had his name on it, and he even had a mentor assigned to help him adjust. At lunch, when other students hesitated, unsure how to talk to the new kid from the wrong side of town, Jamal didn't shrink away. He stood tall, just like Mr. Carter told him. "You have a right to be here." Meanwhile, Denise received her own welcome at her new job. She was nervous at first, surrounded by professionals in a tall office building, but she was determined. The staff greeted her kindly, and her supervisor personally trained her on her first day. She would now work regular hours, with weekends off, something she hadn't had in over a decade. When she got her first paycheck, she didn't buy anything for herself. Instead, she stocked the fridge full for Jamal, and bought a second-hand desk so he could study in peace. That night, they sat together in the quiet apartment, eating a real meal, and laughing for the first time in weeks. "Things are changing," Jamal whispered. His mother smiled. "They already have, baby." They already began to settle into a new rhythm, one that Denise never thought possible. Waking up didn't feel like a burden anymore. She didn't have to race the clock between two jobs, didn't have to choose between paying the light bill or buying groceries. Her mornings now started with coffee in a real mug instead of a paper cup on the bus. She wore clean clothes, walked to work with confidence, and arrived at Mr. Carter's company office, where she was greeted with smiles, not demands. It was a desk job, steady, respectful, and quiet hand while she was still learning the ropes. She soaked in every part of it, like a dry sponge finally finding water. Every day, she took notes, asked questions, and made sure to show up early and stay late. It wasn't just a job. It was her second chance. The paycheck wasn't huge, but it was fair. More than fair. For the first time in years, she was able to pay bills without borrowing, fill the fridge without counting every coin, and even start saving a little. But more than the money, it was the peace of mind that lifted her spirit. The tension that had lived in her shoulders for over a decade started to melt away. She began smiling more, laughing more, even sleeping through the night. Meanwhile, Jamal noticed everything. He watched his mother transform not into someone new, but into the woman she used to be before life got hard. The sparkle in her eyes came back, the tired sighs became humming in the kitchen, and when she tucked him in at night, her goodnight kiss didn't feel rushed or worried. It felt warm, like home. Jamal himself was doing better than he ever imagined. At his new school, he was finally seen not as a poor kid or a background student, but as someone with potential. Teachers praised his focus, and classmates slowly warmed up to him. He still helped out at Ray's garage on weekends, not because he needed to, but because he loved it. Mr. Carter stayed in touch too, checking in on them both without hovering. He offered guidance when needed and reminded them constantly, this isn't a handout, it's a hand up. One Friday evening, Denise sat at their little kitchen table, her first full month's paycheck in hand. She looked over at Jamal, who was finishing his homework. You know, she said softly, this job didn't just change my life, it gave me back the strength to believe again. Jamal looked up and smiled. You always had that strength. The months that followed felt like a new beginning, not just for Jamal, but for his entire world. The apartment that once echoed with silence and struggle now carried the sound of laughter, late-night conversations, and quiet peace. Denise decorated slowly, one frame or curtain at a time, turning the space into a real home. Jamal's new school routine became familiar. Crisp uniform, fresh notebooks, a school bus that picked him up from the front curb. He no longer had to walk miles or hide his worn shoes. He held his head higher, participated in class more, and even started joining after-school clubs. One teacher, noticing his natural understanding of how machines worked, invited him to the robotics team. Jamal hesitated at first, worried he wouldn't fit in, but he tried it anyway. Within a few weeks, he was helping build and program machines that could lift small objects, and his teammates began to turn to him with questions. You've got an engineer's brain, one instructor said with a proud nod. At home, Jamal used the tablet Mr. Carter had given him to research cars, engines, and design software. Every night, he dreamed of building something great, maybe even running his own auto company one day. Meanwhile, Denise continued to grow in her job. Her manager saw her dedication and encouraged her to take night classes offered through the company. It wasn't easy, but she was determined. She started learning computer skills and office management. And after just 3 months, she was given more responsibility and a raise. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to think ahead, to plan for the future, instead of just surviving the present. Weekends became sacred. They no longer revolved around chores or extra shifts. Instead, Denise and Jamal took walks, visited the library, cooked meals together, and sometimes just sat in silence, enjoying a kind of calm they once believed was only for other people. Jamal never forgot where he came from, though. He still kept in touch with Ray at the garage, visiting every couple of weekends to help out and keep his skills sharp. He told Ray everything about the new school, Mr. Carter, and the opportunities opening up like doors he never knew existed. Ray always smiled and said the same thing. You earned it, kid. And deep down, Jamal believed it. Life still wasn't perfect, but for the first time, it felt full of hope, purpose, and possibility. He had been given a chance, and he was going to make sure it counted. Chapter 9. Giving back. As Jamal grew older, his success didn't make him forget where he came from. It made him remember it even more deeply. He carried his past like a quiet compass, always pointing him toward the people who needed help the most. By the time he reached his final year in high school, he had already earned a full-ride scholarship to a prestigious university to study mechanical engineering. His grades were excellent, his teachers admired his drive, and his story had quietly become known around the school. But Jamal didn't let the attention go to his head. Instead, he looked for ways to give back, just like Mr. Carter had told him all those years ago. One day after class, Jamal met with a school counselor and asked if he could start a mentorship program for younger students who were struggling, especially those from low-income families. He called it Fix It Forward, a name inspired by the flat tire that had changed everything. Every week, Jamal met with small groups of students, helping them with homework, listening to their challenges, and reminding them that their circumstances didn't define their potential. He brought in guest speakers, taught basic mechanical skills at a local community center, and even raised money through school fundraisers to buy supplies for kids who couldn't afford them. Meanwhile, Denise was just as involved. Her steady job had now turned into a full-time administrative role, and she volunteered on weekends, helping organize community drives and food donations. Together, mother and son had become a quiet force of good in their neighborhood, proof that kindness could ripple outward in ways no one expected. Jamal still kept in close contact with Mr. Carter, who remained a mentor and friend, but now their conversations were less about help and more about vision. "You've become exactly what I saw in you," Mr. Carter once said over coffee. "And even more." Jamal smiled and replied, "I'm just getting started." That weekend, Jamal took a long walk through his old neighborhood. It hadn't changed much. The buildings were still cracked, the streets still uneven, but now he saw it with new eyes. He passed by the corner where he first saw Mr. Carter with the flat tire. A kid was walking by, his backpack torn and shoes worn thin. Jamal stopped and pulled out a flyer for his mentorship program. "Hey," he said kindly, "you ever think about building things?" The boy looked up, surprised. "Sometimes," Jamal smiled, handing him the paper. "Come by Saturday. I think you'll like it." Just like that, the cycle of kindness continued, quiet, powerful, and full of purpose.
This didn't make him forget where he came from, it made him remember it even more deeply. He carried his past like a quiet compass, always pointing him toward the people who needed help. Most by the time he reached his final year in high school, he had already earned a full-ride scholarship to a prestigious university to study mechanical engineering. His grades were excellent, his teachers admired his drive, and his story had quietly become known around the school. But Jamal didn't let the attention go to his head. Instead, he looked for ways to give back. Just like Mr. Carter had told him all those years ago, one day after class, Jamal met with a school counselor and asked if he could start a mentorship program for younger students who were struggling, especially those from low-income families. He called it Fix It Forward, a name inspired by the flat tire that had changed everything. Every week, Jamal met with small groups of students, helping them with homework, listening to their challenges, and reminding them that their circumstances didn't define their potential. He brought in guest speakers, taught basic mechanical skills at a local community center, and even raised money through school fundraisers to buy supplies for kids who couldn't afford them. Meanwhile, Denise was just as involved. Her steady job had now turned into a full-time administrative role, and she volunteered on weekends, helping organize community drives and food donations. Together, mother and son had become a quiet force of good in their neighborhood, proof that kindness could ripple outward in ways no one expected. Jamal still kept in close contact with Mr. Carter, who remained a mentor and friend, but now their conversations were less about help and more about vision. "You've become exactly what I saw in you," Mr. Carter once said over coffee, "and even more." Jamal smiled and replied, "I'm just getting started." That weekend, Jamal took a long walk through his old neighborhood. It hadn't changed much. The buildings were still cracked, the streets still uneven, but now he saw it with new eyes. He passed by the corner where he first saw Mr. Carter with the flat tire. A kid was walking by, his backpack torn and shoes worn thin. Jamal stopped and pulled out a flyer for his mentorship program. "Hey," he said kindly, "you ever think about building things?" The boy looked up, surprised. "Sometimes," Jamal smiled, handing him the paper. "Come by Saturday. I think you'll like it." Just like that, the cycle of kindness continued, quiet.
Years passed, and Jamal's name slowly became known, not just in his neighborhood, but across the city. He graduated with honors from one of the top universities, earning a degree in mechanical engineering. But he didn't chase a flashy lifestyle or move far away. Instead, he returned home and opened a youth tech and auto skills center in the very neighborhood he grew up in. It was a place where kids could come after school, learn how to work with tools, build machines, and discover the power of their own potential. He named it Carter Center, in honor of the man who had once pulled over with a flat tire and changed his life forever. Mr. Carter, now older but still sharp, was there at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, standing beside Denise, who beamed with pride as she watched her son speak to a crowd filled with children, families, teachers, and neighbors. Jamal shared his story not to boast, but to remind everyone that even the smallest act of kindness can echo through generations. That night, after the event, Jamal stayed back to clean up, just like he always did. As he stepped outside to take a breath, he noticed a young boy struggling to fix a flat tire on a rusty old bike. His hands were covered in grease, and frustration was written all over his face. Jamal smiled quietly to himself and walked over. "Need a hand?" he asked gently. The boy looked up, surprised to see a tall man in a clean shirt kneeling beside him. "I think I messed it up," the kid said. "I was trying to fix it for my little brother." Jamal nodded, understanding completely. "That's a good reason. Let's fix it together." As they worked, side by side, Jamal told him, without going into detail, about a time when he was just like him, barefoot, unnoticed, but full of potential. When they were done, the boy looked up and said, "Thanks, Mr. Jamal." Ruffled the kid's hair and replied, "Just promise me one thing. Help someone else someday, when you get the chance." The boy nodded, not fully understanding yet, but something about the moment stuck in his eyes. As Jamal walked away, the sun dipped low, casting a golden light across the quiet street. He paused, turned back for a second, and smiled. Life had come full circle. From a flat tire to a future rebuilt through one act of kindness, and the courage to carry it forward. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs hope today. We'd love to hear your thoughts, drop them below. And for more powerful stories, subscribe now to Deep Wounds on YouTube.